Look at that smoke ring!
A big thanks to Bernhard for sponsoring this episode.
I did not wrap these beef ribs, and here's why. Smoking meat is one of the most primal things you can do. Ever since the beginning of time, we started grilling meat, but also smoking meat. And at some point, it kind of became complicated. And I was wondering, what happens if we take one element away from that? What if I don't wrap my beef ribs? We're gonna find out today.
You're gonna see some serious
After smoking beef ribs or brisket, we usually wrap it in butcher's paper. That way we enclose the meat and protect it from drying out. It also reduces the cooking time significantly. But there are also downsides. You're gonna have a less crunchy bark and the meat is exposed to smoke for a shorter period of time. Let's see what happens to beef ribs if you don't wrap. I selected the beautiful rack of beef ribs. These are prime beef ribs, which means they have a good amount of intermuscular fat. And you need that fat to make sure that the beef ribs are not gonna turn out dry. I'm gonna trim off all the fat and silver skin that sits on top. I wanna create a surface that is even all over the meat. That way I'm gonna get an equal amount of flavor on each and every bite. And of course these beef ribs are gonna need some seasoning. So I'm gonna make a barbecue rub out of 2 tablespoons of fine salt, 1 tablespoon of paprika powder, 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of dried parsley, half a tablespoon of garlic powder, half a tablespoon of cumin powder, 1 tablespoon of mustard seeds and 1 teaspoon of chili powder. I'm gonna mix it up and sprinkle it onto my beef ribs. I'm gonna let this sit for a little while so that the spices can blend with the moisture out of the meat and that everything will stick to it. Once that's done, I'm gonna season the sides. I'm not gonna season the back of the ribs because there's a big layer of fat and silver skin. And I'm gonna use that fat and silver skin to protect the meat from drying out. Since I'm not using the 4-2-10 method, I'm gonna be using a thermometer. And I'm gonna stick one of these in. These are wireless thermometers. I'm sticking it in the thickest part of the beef ribs. Now this is all ready to go. I'm gonna fire up my Bernhard pellet smoker. The first thing that I'm gonna do is check the hopper for pellets. So this thing is ready to be turned on and to start smoking. The beef ribs are gonna go on with the thickest part pointed towards the hottest part of the barbecue and let these smoke at a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius. The beef ribs are on the smoker for around 2 hours now, and I want to do a quick check and oh yes, bones are starting to pop. We're getting a good crust on the outside. It's drying up nicely. Some of the fat is rendering down and dropping into the drip tray. Next thing I want to do is check the temperature, and we're currently running at 54 degrees Celsius. And that opens up a window, the spray window. From typically 50 degrees Celsius to 70 degrees Celsius, it's the perfect time to spray. From 50 degrees, the outside of the beef ribs turn dry and could use a little bit of moisture. But up to 70 degrees Celsius, it makes sense for building up bark and a smoke ring. And if you miss that window, you're gonna lose out on the opportunity to create that smoke ring. That means you need to get out your coffee maker, and not the new fashioned ones, but the old-fashioned ones. And if you're like me, you have one of these things laying around just in case you need one. Just in case you need to do some science in cooking. Because this device is not a coffee maker. Well, it is a coffee maker, but it's an extraction machine. It allows me to extract flavors from anything that I put in this pouch. So a pouch goes in, and in my case, I'm putting in my barbecue rub. Now I got a loaded spray bottle, and I'm gonna use the same flavor that I already have on my beef ribs and add it with a little bit of moisture. And I'm gonna repeat this process 2 more times until I reach a core temperature of 70 degrees Celsius. Our beef ribs have been cooking for 4 hours and 16 minutes. It says we almost have 2 hours more to go, but of course I wanna see what it looks like. A thermometer is nice, but it's not gonna tell you what your bark looks like. Wow, our beef ribs look freaking amazing. I'm getting a beautiful color on my crust. We're building up that beautiful bark, but as you can see, that bark has some moisture to it. So I don't have to be worried for these beef ribs to dry out. However, they look freaking delicious, juicy with a beautiful bark, so I see that I'm heading in the right direction with this no wrap setup. It did crunch up in the end after all, but surely doesn't look too dry. Throughout the cook, I resisted my urge to wrap these beef ribs. I didn't do it. I pulled through. Now they're here on my plate. And what do you typically do when you rest food? You wrap it. I'm not gonna wrap it though. I'm not gonna do it. Instead, I came up with a different idea. I'm gonna let this rest in my oven, in my house, at a temperature of 65 degrees Celsius. Four hours at 65 degrees Celsius and my beef ribs look like this. They have a dry, crunchy bark. There's not a lot of moisture to see on the outside. I hope that's gonna be a different story once we slice into this. Those are some magnificent beef ribs. Look at that smoke ring. Now I'm a happy man. Look at a crust, smoke ring, nice and fatty. That is freaking fantastic. This looks freaking insane. I'm gonna get a slice out of this. I'm gonna try it. And I'm gonna let you know if I'll never be wrapping forever and ever for the rest of my life again. Wow, this looks good. Wow. It is tender, fall off the bone tender. Look at that. And let's do a little pull test. Absolutely shredding tender. That beef looks freaking amazing. And through juicy. Look at that. Through and through juicy, smoke ring, good crust. Just letting you know. I can't wrap again, ever.